Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Tuesday edition of the program. We're going to kick it off with good old Buddy Martin, second portion of the program. We got former Gator, Chicago Bear, running back Neal Anderson. But let's go straight to the Titan MRI hotline. And we're joined by Buddy Martin. Good morning, Buddy. How are you?
I'm great, Shane. Good morning to you. This is a really important day when we start collaborating on our shows, and I'm honored to be here this morning. Before we start, may I just say condolences to you and your family for the loss of your dad, Bill Matthews, who passed this past weekend and at 77. And I know he was a very, very outstanding coach and a very good man. And I just want to say I'm so sorry you lost your dad. And I talked to Coach Spurrier yesterday, and he had a high regard for him as a coach and as a person. And as a matter of fact, we recall the story about how he came down to see you in the spring game, and you didn't get in. And that's how your career started in Florida. And he was such a gentleman about it, Steve said. He never complained. He said, I understand, Coach. And, of course, you did get in, and the rest is history. So, once again, I'm so sorry about the loss of your dad. Great high school coach in Mississippi, and R.I.P. Bill Matthews.
Well, I appreciate it, buddy. Yeah, it was a tough week for sure. But, we had a lot of good family and friends, former teammates. There's a saying, coach will impact more young people in a year than the average person does in a lifetime. And there's no doubt about that, especially high school coaches. So I really do appreciate that. We had another sad day yesterday, the passing of the winningest coach in the National Football League, Don Shula. And I'm sure, buddy, along your tenure of being a journalist, you had to have covered Don Shula at some point, right?
I certainly did, and covered him quite a bit in his early days. And then I was fortunate to cover his team when he had that great run, and caught him after the winning season, the undefeated season. And just moved back from New York and covered that whole next year to watch that team play. What do you start with Don Shula? Certainly a guy that had his impact both in Florida and in football as a person and as a coach. And he's got to be a Mount Rushmore guy, doesn't he?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And, I didn't realize this till I was just looking through some stuff yesterday after his passing. I forgot, that was pretty much the last team that Coach Spurrier had signed with. I know he was released, I believe, after the preseason. But I didn't realize that he actually got a little bit of time playing under Don Shula.
Well, I had him on my show, Buddy Martin show, which you'll be on tonight. Last night, Coach Spurrier, we wrote about this in the book we did together, Head Ball Coach. Steve was on his way back from Denver, driving after being cut by the Broncos, on his way to Gainesville, and he stopped. He didn't have a cell phone. He called Jerry, and Jerry said, you need to call Norm Carlson. Of course, a great SID and longtime friend. And Norm said, Don Shula wants you to call him right away. So I guess Steve came on through Gainesville and drove right to Miami, and he joined the team that week. They had Strock and Greasy and whoever else I forgot there. They had two quarterbacks at that time. Steve stayed with them 1 week, and they played the Giants. He didn't get in the game, but he did put the uniform on. And the following Monday, Don Shula told him, well, I can only carry two quarterbacks. If I carry the third, I'd keep you, but I can't carry but two because of injuries. And he says, if something comes up, I'll call you. So Steve got back in his car and drove to Gainesville and started watching Gator football games. And what would have happened if he hadn't done that? My goodness, how that changed history.
There's no doubt about it. So I think the Gator Nation needs to be excited that the Dolphins cut Coach Spurrier.
Really? Should get to thank him for sure. But R.I.P. to Don Shula. I read a thing yesterday. Let's take a second. My friend Bernie Lincecum, who covered Don for 15 years, said that one of the things he used to do with writers later on was he asked them to watch the game film before he would do the press conference. And there was black and white film in those days. So Don had his own way. He was a stubborn cuss. And if you asked a question he didn't like, he would let you know in the press conference. I've been the subject. I've been the object of that Don Shula ire a few times. So there you go.
Well, buddy, let's switch gears back to college football. What are you hearing out there from all your people? I know everyone has their own opinions, but it just seems like I'm reading this university is going to plan to open campus this date, that date. It just seems like we may be leaning towards possibly playing college football.
Well, I mean, it seems that way, doesn't it? And certainly it's something we have to hope for. I heard a caller on Feinbaum's show yesterday from Houston, an LSU fan, say, I would be willing to sign a waiver to go see my Tigers play, even if there was COVID, if I was exposed to it. Gator fan, and it is kind of one of the things in the South, especially. There's economic stability and the mental capacity to deal with the sickness and all those things. But in Florida, in the Southeast particularly, there are people who basically would go, what my friend Terry Bradshaw calls quarantine crazy, if they don't get some Gator football, get some SEC football. And I think that's what we talked about on Feinbaum's show last week, is that somehow, some way, if it's possible and not too risky, they've got to have college football. They're going to have the NFL apparently. There's got to be a way to get some college football game. I think we're leaning in that direction, but I am scared to death of this COVID like everybody else. And I hope we have football, because without it, we are going to be crazy.
Yeah, we're speaking with Buddy Martin. You can follow him on Twitter at Buddy Show. You can also check his show out live Monday through Thursday around 9 o'clock on Facebook Live, the Buddy Martin Show. Buddy, I think their word came out of Gainesville yesterday that Florida offensive lineman Isaiah Walker has entered the NCAA transfer portal. What are you hearing about him?
Well, I'd like everybody else. I call this recruiting angst. There's a lot of that going on, not just in the transfer portal, but obviously Tennessee is on fire right now. Got some 5 stars. Gator fans who don't know what to think of all this, don't understand the process, and I understand how they feel when they feel like that somebody like Tennessee has jumped up and getting players out of Florida, which they did, but the defensive back they got. I tried not to get too crazy about that, but there's something going on here with this kid Isaiah Walker. I don't know enough about it, except to say I am not going to make my projections based on the mindset of a 17 or 18-year-old right now, because it's going to change a lot. And by the way, the transfer portal giveth, and the transfer portal taketh away. We saw what Dan Mullen did with it last year. There's already talk, and again, I hate to talk in rumors about a possible Mississippi State transfer, who played, I guess, for Hevesy there. I think they'll get. It's too bad to lose a 4-star tackle in the offensive line, which is your Achilles heel. So it's unfortunate, but I wouldn't get too excited about this either. No one to start getting too excited about the 2021 class. Shane, I'm trying to make it through the day, man. I can't worry about 2021. I want to have a 2020 season. So that's a factor.
Yeah, you and I are the same, buddy. I don't get caught up in all this recruiting, just because, as you mentioned, kids are going to change their minds between now and when it's signing day. And yeah, Tennessee supposedly, I mean, according to the rankings, we're still like 4th in the country. Tennessee maybe moved up to like 3rd or what have you. But look, until Tennessee start winning some games on the field, that's all that matters. And yeah, I know people have criticized Dan Mullen and his staff from a recruiting standpoint, but look, they can coach. And I know you got to have good players to win championships, but you got to have better coaching, in my opinion. So I think we're going to be okay there. And as you mentioned, these kids are going to change their mind once again, and I'm sure a lot of them will come back and commit back to the Gators.
Hey, let Kirby Smart have the recruiting trophy every year. That's fine. Let him have it. And, yeah, you want to do as good as you can. It's important. And we'll see how it turns out. But I'm not going to get too excited yet. Can I just say one thing before we run out of time? I really enjoyed your Lumos Brown interview yesterday. Lumos Brown, a great player in Detroit. I had forgotten he played 18 years. And I love the part when he talked to you about Barry Sanders, how they made it a point that they were not going to let him get up by himself, that he and his teammate, the center, were going to go over and pick Barry Sanders up every time. And what great passion and what a great Gator Lumos Brown has been. And really, thank you for bringing that to us. That was really, really good.
Yeah, it was great, and I know Emmett We all love Emmett being a Gator and the all-time NFL leading rusher. But, buddy, my majority of my years in the NFL were standing on the sideline watching. And those times when I was with the Bears and we played Detroit, I have never in my life seen a guy with that kind of ability run the football. It was something to see. And I don't think people appreciate what he did as a running back because he was on such bad football teams.
I agree, and I was privileged to see him at Oklahoma State when he played in Colorado. I thought to myself, wow, this guy's something. And I asked the Broncos why they didn't draft him. They passed on him. They said, well, he's got a knee problem. Ha! That turned out not to be a very good projection. Barry Sanders is one of the great people. I don't know him personally. I hear, and also certainly one of the greatest of all time running backs. Hey, and by the way, I know you're probably watching Michael Jordan Last Dance. And I
Yes.
got to say, it's better than I expected. And there's some dicey stuff going on there right now. And I heard Coach Spurrier talking about the trips he made to the golf trip. We used to go to some of the golf tournament, how Jordan was there and how Charles Barkley was there. They had some interesting card games. I'll say that. So, but yeah, I'm loving that Last Dance. How about you?
Yeah, it's outstanding, and it's interesting because a lot of that happened when my first couple of years in Chicago. And my guest after you today, buddy, is Neal Anderson, who
I
had a
know.
long Bears, and he was pretty close to Michael Jordan. I know he played a lot of golf with him, and we'll hear some of those
Hmm.
stories today. And we'll also, he backed up Walter Payton, maybe
Wow.
one of the greatest running backs too. So we'll get some great stories from Neal today. We're speaking with Buddy Martin on the Titan MRI hotline from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Buddy, a couple more things before we let you go.
Sure.
Let everybody know what's going on with Gatorbait Media.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate those people who supported us during this time. Like everybody else, we're hanging in there, and we've got a couple of new memberships for you. So you can get a membership for everything. It's the whole package. Just go to GatorbaitMedia.com and pick out a package, and you can get it monthly or yearly or whatever. They hold annual. If you get everything, it's only $99. That gives us a chance to publish a magazine every Thursday. We do our show, and of course, we do have a website. So if you're interested in keeping up with some pretty good stuff, this week we've got some interesting stories by Cassidy Hill and France Beard's writing about the '04 basketball team, Ainsley Glee. I've got a column with Urban Meyer, and of course we know now what a fantastic run he had there, and the fact that the two guys who were the centerpiece of his team, of course, were Spikes and Tebow. And I guess Brandon James, they all three are going in the Hall of Fame. So we'll have a piece on Urban this week. So thank you for that. If you want to keep up with stuff that's going on, subscribe to Gatorbait. We do appreciate it. Again, GatorbaitMedia.com.
I know one thing I want to bring up, buddy, because, I've been fortunate during doing my show here to bring a lot of former players on, tell stories, talk about their career. A kid who grew up in Mississippi who was basically an Ole Miss rebel growing up. I didn't really know a whole lot about the 80s teams, and I know it kind of rubs some people the wrong way when you talk about it. But I've had Ricky Nattil, I've had Lomas Brown, I've had others from that era, Kerwin Bell, and now I'm going to have Neal today. It is amazing at the amount of talent that like 84, 85 team. Can you talk briefly about what you thought about those teams?
Well, it's funny that you brought that up because that is also my weakness. I was gone to New York during that time and Denver and didn't see them play that much. I saw the 60s, the 70s, the 90s, and the 2000s. I saw all those games almost. I didn't see them play except on TV. I know they were loaded with talent. Everybody I've talked to, the books I've done over the years, it talks about even Charlie Pell, who's sort of the black sheep. He did so much for the university. What he did, Jeremy Foley, one time I had a conversation. I said, pick the top 5 biggest names of people who had impact in Florida. And he put Charlie Pell's name on there, as others have done, because of his ability to recruit, get people. And as you talk to players, I heard him talk about him the other day, they'll tell you what a great force Charlie was and what a great job he did. And he had talent. You're right. He has unbelievable talent. I mean, you just talk about those running backs, Neal Anderson being one. Fantastic. Nattil, you just go through the list. You're hitting them all. I'm loving this. I told one of my reporters, you're doing a piece on the 80s. be sure to listen to Neal Anderson today on Pod Up with Shane Matthews, because we're going to learn a lot of things. Can you imagine the running backs that he had and the player and the great wall you talked about with Lomas? That's great stuff. I'm getting educated on this myself.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's been really good for me. We're going to have some more former players from that era on as the year goes on. But, Buddy, anything else from the Buddy Martin show?
Thank you. We'll have our usual cast of suspects. We'll have our star reporter Cassidy will be on tomorrow night. Of course, France Beard joins us. We're talking primarily now about this has given us a chance to reflect back. We're taking a decade. We're just finishing up the era from 2000 to 2009 this week, and on the magazine and on the show somewhat. So we'll be talking about that. I want to say I'm looking forward to having you on the show tonight. And I want to salute your dad, Bill Matthews, because you talk about great coaches. You got Don Shula on one hand. The people who don't get the credit, the people who are the high school coaches. Your dad coached for so long in Mississippi. Hall of Fame was scheduled to go in this year. And the people who do that, as you said, they affect more people in 1 week than most people do in a lifetime. So I say we should do this show this year. You and I, and we'll do it on my show at night in honor of Coach Bill Matthews from Pascagoula, who did such a fantastic job, was a special guy. And Coach Spurrier told me, he said he heard that the book Head Ball Coach was right at his bed on the table. He said you told him. So God bless him, and we'll be sure and remember Bill Matthews, and this still will be an honor. This year will be an honor of Coach Matthews.
Well, I appreciate that, buddy. Last thing for you. Have they rescheduled or postponed SEC Media Days? Any news out of that?
It really hasn't been rescheduled. I think everything is up for grabs. It was scheduled originally to go in July. That's our starting point for what we do. But I have not heard any more details. I'd be very surprised if they had it on schedule, but I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't have it, limit it, and have social distancing for it, because that is kind of the kickoff for the season. That's the first, the swallow of spring. When we get that SEC Media Days, we think, okay, it's going to be coming soon. So I have not heard any more about it, but I will keep you posted on the show every Tuesday if I hear anything. And likewise, look forward to tonight. Shane Matthews now on the Buddy Martin Show. Be sure and tune in.
All right, buddy. Hey, we appreciate it. Be safe down there in Ocala. We'll talk to you tonight.
Thank you, Shane. You as well.
All right. That's the great Buddy Martin. You can check him out on Twitter at Buddy Show, and also check his show out on Facebook Live, The Buddy Martin Show. We got a couple Facebook Live comments here. Dan says, which is brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Dan says the 84 and 85 teams were great. Went to many of those games. And yes, they had so much talent. It's crazy. And I'm learning more and more about it. Let's get to our This Day in Sports, which is brought to you by the Best Restoration. Do you have COVID-19 concerns? Do what everyone is doing and hire the Best Restoration to fully sanitize and sterilize your home or office. Visit their offices this week for a free bottle of hand sanitizer when you mention the code Shane. Call them 352-234-8994. And This Day in Sports, in 1978, the Cincinnati Reds, Pete Rose, Charlie Hustle, becomes the 14th player to get 3,000 hits. So that's brought to you by the Best Restoration. We're going to take a quick time out here. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Charlie Neal Anderson, former Gator running back and Chicago Bear Pro Bowl running back. You're listening and watching Hot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, the Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys,
The Digital Mortgage Guy,
Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Gator Dominoes,
Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We want to thank Buddy Martin for joining us on the Titan MRI hotline. Hey, folks, Celebration Point is where the Gators come to celebrate, where premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas, and coming soon, the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point, where the Gators come to celebrate. We're going to be joined by Neal Anderson here in just 1 second. Also want to let everybody know that Jackie Spreads, who's currently on leave, is also brought to you by Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. We're going to go now to the Titan MRI hotline, and we're joined by old number 27, Neal Anderson. Good morning, Neal. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Shane. How are you?
Doing good, my man. We appreciate you joining the program. I'm having a great time doing this podcast. I started back in January, Neal, and getting a lot of former players, but it's great to get guys from the 80s because, you know, me growing up in Mississippi, I knew all about Ole Miss football, didn't know a whole lot about the Gators, and I'm learning. I had Big Lomas on yesterday, and, of course, I've got Ricky Nattil and Dwayne Dixon and those guys. But, you know, you're a guy that grew up in Graceville, Florida, which you know, I guess I always ask the players first, what made you become a Florida Gator, and what other schools recruited you very heavily?
Well, I was very fortunate, and I mean, God blessed me tremendously as a kid. I was pretty athletic, so I was recruited by pretty much everybody. I mean, there was a lot of schools. I actually leaned toward Alabama because, you know, Paul Bear Bryant was still there. They had won everything. And, you know, he came to my house in Graceville, and the city pretty much had a parade when he came there. A little town of 2,500 people. And my niece was just recently born, and he held her. And so he's got pictures of Bear Bryant holding her, and she ended up going to University of Alabama, and people were amazed that he's sitting there with that hat on, holding her when she was a baby. But in the end, you know, I didn't go to Alabama because, you know, they had won everything. And really nothing I felt I could do there that had not been done. And, you know, if you win, it's like, so what? You know, we've been winning before. At the time I looked at Florida, they had never won a Southeastern Conference championship. And that was something I thought that would be neat if I could be a part of the first team that did that. And I think it was in 1980, the Gators went 0-10-1. So most people thought I was crazy, you know, for coming to Florida. And they had what some people thought was a stacked backfield with Lorenzo Hampton. He was still going to be there a couple more years, and he was the starter. And then I think Johnny Williams was recruited the same year as me, and he probably at that time was the highest rated player that the Gators had ever landed. Just unbelievable running back. So again, I think people thought, why are you going there? You might not get on the field, coming from a small little city like Graceville. But and that was kind of the reason I ended up choosing University of Florida. And as you know, we were very fortunate and, actually did win an SEC championship, the first in the school's history.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Who was the main guy that recruited you there to come to Florida?
Mickey Andrews, Mickey and Diane Andrews. And I say his wife, Diane, because she would bake some brownies for me. And so, and they were really, really good.
So
they were really good. They were good people. The Brownies sealed the deal, but they were just good people and treated my family really, really nice. And so he did a really good job.
So when you get to Florida, obviously, they had the Great Wall, Zimmerman, Lomas, Brown, Crawford Kerr, that whole crew. What was it like running behind those big jokers?
Well, it was great. I mean, we knew, we wanted to run the ball. And, sometimes, you being a quarterback will understand some of the quarterbacks had a difficult time with it. And, and the Rick and the Teal and Frankie Neals and, some of the wide receivers, because, we wanted to run the ball. And Charlie Pell especially he wanted to lean on you a little bit. And Galen Hall, when he got there as coach, he didn't want to change what we were doing because we were having some success. And so it was, you have a lot of people in the huddle wanting the ball. And unfortunately, it was one ball. And I tell you, and one of the greatest that I've ever played with, John L. Williams. I don't know how he did what he did. I mean, I was named the starter, and he was moved to the fullback position. And this guy was an elite runner, as you know, and he never complained, never got upset, and just moved from halfback, the kind of glamour position, to fullback, which is typically doing the dirty work, doing a little more blocking. But he never batted an eye and just kept doing his thing. And obviously it worked out well for him as a pro.
Yeah. How difficult? Talk about that. I mean, as you mentioned, it was Neal Anderson, John L. Williams, and Lorenzo Hampton. I believe all three were first-round draft picks. And I think, you go back to recent time now, Alabama's had Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, and Alvin Kamara all on the same team. How was it in practice? I mean, like as you mentioned, Neal, everyone wants the football. Was there any jealousy there among y'all three?
If it was, nobody let it be known. I mean, I know for a fact, I can speak for myself, I wanted to get on the field, because you can't really show what you can do unless you can get on the field. And but also in that backfield, at fullback, my first year was James Jones, who he was a first-round pick. So in one backfield, we had 4 future first-round draft picks. So that was, again, you don't have enough balls to go around because people at that level, if you're at that level, you want the ball. But I think we all handled it well. When we were not in, we cheered for the other guy and waited on our turn.
We got a Facebook Live question here for you, Neal, and it's brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Dan wants to know, do you still have an SEC ring from the '84 team?
Yes, I do.
All right,
yes, I do, and that's one of my prized possessions.
So you play for Charlie Pell and Galen Hall. Were they similar? Did you like one of them better than the other?
Well, they were very similar, and I think the big reason was everybody was concerned when Galen Hall came in, of what he was going to do and how he would change things. But he was a very smart man. I mean, he knew this team had a lot of success with what they were doing, and he came in and we kept doing the same thing. And every now and then he might tweak something here or there. but for the most part, we kept doing the same same things that we were doing. And so I give him a lot of credit for being able to recognize that.
When y'all had a freshman quarterback who was a walk on, earned the job in Old Kerwin. Didn't they stick you as his roommate on the road?
Yeah, yes, they did. They put me as a roommate to kind of as an upperclassman a little bit to keep him calm, and so he would be nice and relaxed, and I had a lot of fun with him. So I played a lot of pranks on him and made fun of him, and so I think I did my job.
You got any good stories you can let our listeners know?
Well,
that you play, I think jokes you played on Kerwin.
Well, the most famous one I think was when we walked into the first game that we staying in the hotel, and we get in the hotel room, and I grab the remote, and I'm kind of walking in the room and getting settled. He reaches over, but he goes up and he manually turns the TV on. So I turn it off. He looks around and he turns it back on. Well, we go through that for quite a few minutes. And then it got a little boring, so he turned it on and he got it on, I don't know if it was ESPN, one of the channels he wanted it on, and I would change it. And he's looking around like it's got to be a ghost, something's not right. And I see him keep looking around. I'm pretending not to pay attention. And then finally what ended it is when he laid down on his back and kind of pulled himself like a mechanic, pulling himself under the car. He got under the TV, and I guess he was gonna fix it. So then that was about all I could take. So that was pretty good. And once we pretended that he had a call from a reporter. We were on a flight on the airplane, and it was another one of the teammates up there asking him questions, but he was over the speaker, so everybody on the plane could hear him answer. And so we had some fun at his expense, but I think he enjoyed it also. He took it well.
Yeah, I guess they didn't have remotes over in Mayo, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not at that time.
Yeah. So, Neal, you get drafted in the first round by the Chicago Bears, and they just won the Super Bowl. Talk a little bit about, going to a Super Bowl champion team with a lot of characters, man. My rookie year, some of those characters were still playing there in Chicago. Talk a little bit about what it was like going to the Windy City.
Well, the first thing I thought, is I was drafted by the team that won the last Super Bowl, and they had just done the Super Bowl shuffle. So I figured I'd be singing and dancing in Chicago, and I can't sing, I can't dance, can't do either one well. So, but to be drafted and on the team, and going to be there with Walter Payton, arguably the greatest running back ever to live. And so, but by the time I got there, I mean, my job was to take his job, and so it was a little rocky, at first, because I was the only first round pick as a running back who had ever gotten drafted by the Bears during his career, and so that was a little tough, and I understand he's a competitor, and we both wanted that same job, and and I did not come in to learn, from him. I came in to get out on the field and contribute. And I just kind of figured that's what they expected from a first round pick. So we had a little bit of a rocky start, and but it was, just, you're going to be around people like William Perry and Mike Dick and Jim McMahon, and some of these guys seemed, kind of larger than life characters. And so it was something that I thought was going to be special, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything in the world. I had a great time, while I was there in Chicago, and played all 8 years in the same place, and again wouldn't trade any of those experiences for anything in the world.
We got another question here, a comment on Facebook Live, brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorney. Jeff wants you to talk a little bit about Wilber Marshall.
Wilbur was the great Wilber Marshall. I played with Wilbur a couple years here at the University of Florida, and everybody knew, what kind of college player he was, and one of the greatest defenders ever. I think to put on the college uniform, he could do a little bit of everything. I mean, he could hit, he had the speed, and then to be drafted, on the same team that he was on in the Bears, he kind of took me under his wing, so to speak, a little bit when I got there, and showed me around a little bit. But again, this great player, in the Super Bowl season before I got there, and and then he ended up only being there a few years with me before he ended up getting traded and going on and making a lot more money other places.
We're speaking with Gator great Neal Anderson here on the Titan MR Hotline. Neal, I don't know if you're a big TV guy, and I'm not, but have you seen any of the documentary, The Last Dance, about the Bulls?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I've seen quite a bit of it.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I know you were pretty close to Michael Jordan in your days up in the Chicago area. Did you ever whip up on him in golf?
Yeah, every now and then when I was kind of learning to play a little bit, and he he had a little more experience, but by the time it ended, I think I was the better golfer. And I've seen him every now and then. Like I was down in Orlando, and I saw him. He was there with some friends. I think one was Charles Oakley, but we were out on the golf course and just happened to run into each other. And so it was very satisfying for me because now he wants strokes. So when he needs strokes to try to beat me. That made me feel kind of good.
So Neal, when we were up in Chicago, what was the name of that little golf course? It was about 15 miles, maybe not that far, a little north of the Hallis Hall there. We used to go play all day. What was the name of that golf
one
course?
In Lincoln, there was one in oh man, it was at Lincolnshire.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think that's the one you talked. One was Deer Path, but that was the one in Chicago. I'm sorry, in Lake Forest.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So Neal, you spent your 7 or 8 years in Chicago, and then you decided to make Gainesville home. And you started a bank in the Ocala Gainesville area. Talk a little bit about what got you started in the banking industry.
Well, I had some friends that I knew that were bankers, and I had had a farm, a peanut farm located out in Williston, Florida, named 35 Farms, and we had done some business with Community Banking Trust, actually Sun Trust, and there are some guys that I knew there, Hugh Daly and Dave Denyer. And I had my attorney, Steve Rappanaker, had worked with those guys and with some different things that we had going as far as some loans that we needed. And then when they decided we're going to start a startup bank, they got in touch with me, and I was fortunate enough to be a founding director of Community Banking Trust of Florida. And we opened that up in 1998, and it sold in 2019. And so we had a great run. Every year we were profitable and did really well. So I think I had just a good group of people around me, and so that made a big difference.
You still got your peanut farm?
Nope, that we sold that a few years ago. My big thing now is being a dad and watching the kids and do their thing. So following them and enjoying their sports and just watching them grow up.
Well, talk a little bit about that, because you have some extremely athletic kids that have done really well at the high school level, and just talk briefly about what your kids do.
Well, my son, the oldest is TC, and he's 21. And matter of fact, he graduated on this past Sunday, from Florida Gulf Coast University, and he had a double major, accounting and finance, and he finished and actually finished cum laude in both. So academically, he was off the charts, and he was did well on the soccer field as well. And now he'll go to Drake University in Iowa and play one more year soccer and do the grad school program there.
Awesome.
And then I have a daughter, Camille. She's a freshman this year at UNC Greensboro, University of North Carolina in Greensboro, and very fortunate on volleyball scholarship. And obviously, she's they're out of school right now, so we blessed to have her here at home hanging out with us. And I have the third child, Brianna, and she goes to Buchholz High School, so she's a sophomore, got 2 more years, and also a volleyball player with what seems to be a very, very bright future.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I know you're an extremely competitive young man. I know you love to work on your craft no matter what sport you're in. So is it tennis right now or is it golf?
It's golf. It's golf, and I'm going to do something that I've never done. I've always played golf and played with my friends and had fun, but I've never gone out and really tried to play on the tournament tour. So I'm going to go out in 2021. My goal is to get my game ready and go out and just play in some amateur tournaments and see how I do. And there's no excuses. It's just me, no teammates. I'm all by myself. So that's going to be a pretty interesting experience.
We got another question here on Facebook Live brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorney. Steve wants to know, Neal, how was it adjusting to the Chicago weather when you went there?
Oddly enough, it was a breeze. I grew up in the Panhandle, right on the Alabama line. So we got a little colder than Gainesville does, and it would occasionally have some snow flurries. So I was used to a little more cold than most, I think, Floridians. You think of Florida, you think of Miami and the South Florida and the heat. Well, but again, I was right across the Alabama line, so it was a little bit different. But once you got to Chicago, all of a sudden that cold weather became bear weather. And so, I think sometimes the colder it got, the happier I was, because the fans loved it. I mean, they started taking off their shirts and just letting them know, this is bear weather. So I think I got convinced early that bear weather was made things better for me.
We're speaking with Neal Anderson, Pro Bowl running back for the Chicago Bears, former Gator great, here on the Titan MRI hotline. We got a text on the Titan MRI text line for you, Neal. Ward wants you to tell us about the time you got on the team bus looking for Lawrence Taylor.
Well, no, that's I don't know if I can tell that story, but it was, well, Jay, we had a pretty good battle. I tell you the game that it was about. It was my first NFL start, and it was my second year, and I was starting alongside Walter Payton. So we wouldn't compete. They put me at fullback, and he was at halfback. So I was a starter, and I go out there, and and I'm scared to death, but the block, Lawrence Taylor, I think Harry Carson and Carl Banks, I think it was, and I mean 3 great linebackers. But to make a long story short, I'm doing a pretty good job, and Lawrence kind of takes offense to some of the ways I was blocking him, because I think they had some unwritten rules that you didn't really cut Lawrence Taylor, around his knees and legs, because that's how he made his money. And so I thought I was maybe getting the best of him a little bit, and he took offense to it, and then he started to talk about my mom and and family and anybody he could think of, and just say some kind of off the wall things, and that and he had no idea that, unfortunately for me, the Saturday before, it was a Monday night football game, but the Saturday before that game, I had gone back to Graceville, and we actually had to bury my mom. She passed away of cancer. Well, he had no way of knowing that. And so, but at the time, somebody saying something about your mom, you gotta do what you gotta do. So we had some words, and and later, not later that day, but later in future years, we became pretty good friends. So, but again, it was not something he had researched, and he had no way of knowing. It was just, him being Lawrence being Lawrence.
Peter texts on the Titan MR text line. He wants to know, what was it like playing for Mike Ditka?
It was good and bad. I think we were a lot more alike than we probably either one of us wanted to admit. So we butted heads a lot. We had some very strong opinions and two strong-willed people. And I think people thought, we kind of hated each other, which maybe there were a few times that we did. But for the most part, I think we got along. I know when he got sick, I was one of the first players. I think he had a heart attack to give him a call and check on him. But bottom line, we both wanted to win desperately. And I think he was an old school coach that kind of coached a little bit through a little bit of fear and intimidation. And my problem was I really wasn't afraid, and I didn't get intimidated. I believed in what I could do. So, those tactics didn't really work on me. And I think that was a little bit tough on him, because, I think that was the way he was coached growing up in those years when he played.
Yeah, we got a couple more seconds here with Neal Anderson, former Gator running back. Neal, I asked all those 80 guys when they come on, does it bother you guys that y'all aren't really acknowledged, as champions here, on campus or what have you? Y'all won it on the field, but does that bother you guys?
Well, for me, and honestly, it really doesn't bother me. I think it should be, some recognition given for, winning the first SEC championship in the school's history. I was fortunate enough, and everybody wasn't, to go on and play at the next level, and have a lot of great memories from that time. But I think, there were a lot of people that played here that, again, this was where their football careers ended. And I think they deserve, some recognition for what they did.
We got a final text here for Neal. It comes from Bob. Bob wants to know, Neal, how does your body feel after being a running back in the National Football League?
Well, that's where, I tell everybody who asks, that's where God has blessed me tremendously. He has smiled on me, because to run the ball the way that, as you know, the way we did in Chicago for a while, Dick believed in running. Everybody knew we were going to run it. And so you get beat up a lot, and on sometimes on Monday morning, you really can't function. And to be in the shape that I'm in now, again, it's just nothing but a blessing. I can go out and, run around and, shoot basketball if I want to, run some sprints with my daughter. Not as fast as she can, but I can run the sprints with her. And so, I am, again, very, very blessed. I can walk on the golf course and walk 18 holes. So not many people that played for the years I did in the National Football League can do that. So I feel very fortunate.
Well, Neal, we appreciate you joining the show today, my man. I'm glad you and your family are doing well. Y'all stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon, bud.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. That's Gator great Neal Anderson, former Pro Bowl running back for the Chicago Bears. We're going to take our second time out of the program. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys,
The Digital Mortgage Guy,
Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa,
Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. At Center State Bank, we put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Come in and experience the Center State difference. To learn more, visit centerstatebank.com. Center State Bank, member FDIC. We want to really thank Buddy Martin from the Buddy Martin Show for joining the program, and also former Gator great and Chicago Bear Pro Bowl running back Neal Anderson, who was part of those 84-85 teams, joining us and taking time out of his day to tell some stories and what he's got going on in the world today. Tomorrow's program, we're going to be joined by Willie Jackson Jr., one of my receivers, award number 22. Phenomenal player, comes from a phenomenal athletic family. His dad was the first black athlete to play football at Florida. And then his younger brother, Terry Jackson, was a running back on that 96 national championship team. So we'll have Willie Jackson Jr., and then we'll also have Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus going ahead and recapping the draft and what's going on in the National Football League. And then Thursday's show, Nick Gillum, former NCAA golf champion, is going to join us. And so we got a good lineup for the rest of the week. But that's going to be a wrap for today's show. Be safe out there, folks. Again, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. You've been watching and listening to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Take care.